A desperate cry for help. A faint distress signal echoed through the emptiness of space. It was weak, repeating over and over, a cry for help lost in the void. Captain Ethan Carter sat in the pilot's seat of his small, worn-out starship, the Horizon. The signal blinked on his control screen, coming from a distant, unknown planet. His ship's AI, Nova, spoke in a calm but firm voice. "Captain, this distress signal is coming from Varsha 9. It is classified as a dead planet. No known settlements." Ethan frowned. A dead planet. Then why was someone sending an SOS? He knew the smart decision was to ignore it. Space was dangerous. Pirates, traps, hostile aliens. Anything could be waiting for him down there. But something about the signal felt desperate. "Nova, set course for Varsha 9. We're checking it out." "Captain, I must remind you that this is against standard." "Just do it." The ship's thrusters roared as it changed direction, heading toward the dark, lonely planet. As Ethan entered the atmosphere, his ship shook violently. Thunderstorms raged below, acid rain falling in deadly sheets. The sky was an eerie shade of purple, lightning crackling through thick clouds. The ground was cracked, lifeless, and covered in ash. Ethan activated the ship's scanners. One life sign. Faint. "Nova, locate the source." The AI pinpointed the signal near a cluster of ruined structures. Old, abandoned buildings, half buried under dust and rock. Ethan landed his ship a safe distance away, grabbed his blaster, and stepped outside. His boots sank slightly into the soft, crumbling ground. The air smelled of burnt metal and decay. Moving carefully, he followed his scanner signal. The silence was unnerving. No wind, no movement, just emptiness. Then, a weak sound, barely a whisper, reached his ears. A voice. Ethan hurried forward, pushing aside debris and stepping into a half-destroyed building. There, lying on the ground, was a girl, not human. Her skin had a soft glow, a deep blue with streaks of silver. Her hair was long, tangled, and shimmered under the dim light. Her eyes, barely open, were golden but dull with exhaustion. She tried to speak, but only managed a faint, broken whisper. "Help, please." Ethan knelt beside her. She was badly injured, her breathing shallow. Dark burns covered parts of her arms, and her clothes were torn. Whatever had happened to her, she had suffered greatly. "Hey, stay with me. I got you." Ethan carefully lifted her. She was light, almost too light, as if she hadn't eaten in days. As soon as he touched her, her eyes flickered with fear. "No, run, you must. Run." A deep guttural growl rumbled through the air. Ethan froze. The sound came from behind him. Slowly, he turned his head. A massive creature stood at the entrance of the ruins. Its skin was rough and dark, covered in jagged spikes. Its red eyes burned with hunger. Saliva dripped from its long, sharp teeth. It took a step forward, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Ethan's grip on the alien girl tightened. She had been running from this thing. The creature let out a deafening roar and charged. Ethan reacted instantly, grabbing his blaster and firing 3 quick shots. The energy bolts hit the creature's chest, but barely slowed it down. Damn it. He turned and ran, carrying the girl in his arms. His ship wasn't far, but the creature was fast. Too fast. He jumped over broken debris, dodging falling rocks as the beast smashed through the ruins behind him. The girl groaned weakly in his arms. "Hang on, we're almost there." The Horizon's ramp was already open. Nova had seen the threat and activated emergency entry. Ethan sprinted up the ramp, feeling the heat of the creature's breath just behind him. As soon as his feet touched the ship's floor, he shouted, "Nova, close it. Now." The metal ramp slammed shut just as the beast lunged. Its body crashed against the hull, shaking the entire ship. The girl in Ethan's arms let out a small pain sound, then collapsed completely. Ethan laid her down carefully, checking her pulse. Weak, but still there. Outside, the creature roared in frustration, slamming itself against the ship. "Nova, get us out of here." Engaging thrusters. The ship's engines roared to life. Flames burst from the boosters as the horizon lifted off. The creature leaped into the air, snapping its jaws. But missed by inches. The ship broke through the atmosphere, leaving the doomed planet behind. Ethan let out a breath, leaning against the wall. His heart was still racing. He looked at the girl, unconscious and fragile. Who was she? Why had she been on that planet? And why had that creature been after her? As he stared at her glowing blue skin, he had a sinking feeling. This was just the beginning. Hunted by the beasts. The low hum filled the cockpit as the horizon soared away from the dead planet. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, one hand gripping the controls, the other running through his hair. His pulse was still racing. The monstrous creature that had chased them was unlike anything he had seen before. Strong, fast, and relentless. He had fought his fair share of hostile aliens. But that thing, it had been hunting. And the girl, who was she? Ethan turned his gaze to the unconscious alien girl lying on the medical bed in the ship's small med-bay. Her deep blue skin shimmered faintly under the soft cabin lights, silver streaks in her hair catching the glow. She looked fragile, barely breathing. His ship's AI, Nova, had been scanning her since they took off. "Vitals are unstable, Captain. Oxygen levels low. Cellular decay detected." Ethan frowned. "Decay? What does that mean?" "Her body is deteriorating. Cause unknown. She requires immediate medical attention." Ethan sighed and adjusted course. The closest station was 3 days away. She wouldn't last that long. A weak sound made him turn. The girl stirred, her fingers twitching. Her eyelids fluttered, and for a moment, her golden eyes locked onto Ethan's, wide, terrified. Then she screamed. The sound was sharp, raw, full of fear. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. Ethan raised his hands in a calming gesture. "Whoa, easy. You're safe." But her breathing was too fast, her pupils dilating in panic. Her body glowed brighter for a moment, then flickered. She tried to speak, her voice hoarse. "No, no, no, no. They'll come. They'll find me." Ethan's stomach tightened. Who's coming?" She grabbed his arm with surprising strength, her fingers cold as ice. "You don't understand. They never stop." A loud thud shook the ship. Ethan's breath hitched. He turned sharply to the controls. The ship's sensors flickered, and Nova's voice rang out. "Warning. Unidentified objects detected. Movement approaching rapidly." Ethan pulled up the external cameras. His blood ran cold. Dark, winged shapes moved through the void, silent and deadly. At first, they blended with space itself, but as they drew closer, he could see them more clearly. Massive, biomechanical creatures, with razor-like wings and glowing red eyes. The girl whimpered. "They're here." The creatures had followed them. Ethan cursed and gripped the controls. "Nova, activate shields and charge weapons." Before the AI could respond, the creatures attacked. The ship shook violently as one of the beasts latched onto the hull, its claws scraping against the metal. Another flew past the front window, its red eyes locking onto Ethan before swooping around for another strike. The girl gasped, gripping her chest. Her body glowed brighter. "They sense me. They always sense me." Ethan swerved the ship hard to the right, narrowly dodging another attack. "Nova, give me something here." Weapons at 30%, hull integrity dropping. Ethan gritted his teeth. They couldn't outgun these things. His ship wasn't a war machine. It was a scout vessel, built for speed. Speed. That was their only chance. "Hang on," he shouted. He punched the thrusters to maximum. The horizon roared forward, leaving a trail of blue fire. The sudden burst threw the creatures off momentarily, but they were fast. Within seconds, they were right behind him again. The girl clutched her head, her body flickering like a dying star. I can't stop them," she whispered. Ethan glanced at her through the chaos. She was clearly in pain. These things were drawn to her, but why? A chilling thought hit him. Were they tracking her, or were they part of her? Nova's voice cut through his thoughts. "Captain, a gravitational anomaly detected. A nearby asteroid field." Ethan's mind raced. An asteroid field meant cover. That's our way out. He veered hard left, heading straight for the field of spinning rock and debris. The creatures hesitated, then followed. Ethan grinned. "Let's see how well you fly in this mess." The ship twisted and turned, dodging massive asteroids as they hurtled forward. The creatures struggled, some slamming into rock, others narrowly avoiding impact. One of them clipped a floating chunk of ice and spiraled out of control, crashing into another. But 3 were still chasing. Ethan pushed the ship harder, flying dangerously close to the largest asteroid. At the last second, he pulled up. The beasts weren't so lucky. 2 of them slammed into the rock and exploded into black mist. 1 left. Ethan's victory was short-lived. The final creature screeched and lunged at the ship, sinking its claws into the hull. Metal screamed as the ship's structure buckled. Ethan fought against the controls. If it tore through the hull, they were dead. The girl gasped, her glow now blinding. "I can't control it," she choked out. The air around her crackled with energy. The creature outside froze, as if sensing something. Then, in a single flash of white light, it disintegrated. The ship went still. Ethan barely managed to stabilize the controls before turning to her. She was breathing heavily, her glow fading again. Her body trembled. "What the hell was that?" Ethan demanded. Her golden eyes met his, filled with exhaustion and something else. "Fear. I don't know." Ethan exhaled and leaned back. This was far worse than he had imagined. They weren't just running from monsters. They were running from something much bigger. And this girl, she was at the center of it all. The truth about Syria. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, his grip tight around the controls. His mind raced as he processed what had just happened. One moment, they were being hunted. The next, the alien girl, Syria, had unleashed some kind of force, wiping the creature from existence. Now she lay on the medical bed, her breathing unsteady, her skin flickering between its deep blue and a pale, almost transparent shade. Ethan stood and moved closer, watching as Syria stirred. Her golden eyes flickered open, glazed with exhaustion. For a few seconds, she just stared at the ceiling, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. Then, slowly, she turned her head to look at him. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. Her voice was soft, laced with guilt. Ethan crossed his arms. "Didn't mean to what?" "Vaporize that thing. Because I'd say that was pretty damn useful." Syria winced, her hands clutching the edge of the bed, as if grounding herself. "You don't understand. They weren't chasing me to kill me. They were—" She hesitated, the words catching in her throat. "They were created because of me." Ethan's jaw clenched. "What do you mean?" Syria sat up slightly, her body still weak, but her expression serious. "I wasn't born like this. I was made." The word sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "Made?" Syria exhaled, staring at her hands as they faintly glowed again. "I was an experiment, a prototype. My creators, they wanted something powerful, something beyond any life form that exists. They succeeded." Ethan's heart pounded as he processed her words. Syria continued, her voice hollow. "They wanted to create a being with limitless energy, something that could fuel entire civilizations or destroy them. My body, it generates energy beyond control. But it wasn't enough for them." She swallowed hard. "So they used me to make something worse. Those creatures, those things that chased us, They are living extensions of my energy. They're connected to me. They sense me. Wherever I go, they will always find me. Ethan's stomach twisted. So you're saying, those monsters were hunting you because you are their power source? Syria gave a weak nod. They don't have a mind of their own. They exist to return me to my creators. They're not just hunting me. They're programmed to bring me back. Ethan let out a slow breath, running a hand over his face. So if I hadn't picked up that distress signal, you'd still be down there, waiting. Syria's expression darkened. No, I would already be dead. A heavy silence filled the cabin. Ethan didn't press her for more. He could tell she had already been through hell. But before he could say anything, Nova's voice cut through the quiet. Captain, incoming transmission. Origin, unidentified warship. It has locked onto our location. Ethan's blood turned cold. Syria's entire body tensed. They found me. Ethan rushed back to the cockpit, bringing up the external cameras. His breath caught in his throat. A massive warship loomed in the distance, black as night, with pulsing red lights along its sleek, sharp edges. It moved with eerie silence, a predator in the void. Nova's voice was sharp. They are hailing us. Ethan clenched his jaw. He had no choice. Patch them through. The screen flickered, and a chilling image appeared. A tall figure with gray, metallic skin, glowing white eyes, and no mouth. Its voice, however, echoed through the ship as if it spoke directly into their minds. Return the girl. Syria let out a sharp breath, her hands clutching the sides of the seat. Ethan folded his arms. Not happening. The voice remained emotionless. She does not belong to you. She is property of the Sovereign Core. Return her, and you will be allowed to live. Ethan scoffed. Yeah, and if I refuse? The figure tilted its head. Then you will die. Nova's alert system flashed red. Captain, enemy ship is charging weapons. Ethan didn't hesitate. Nova, full power to shields. Prepare for evasive maneuvers. Syria grabbed his arm. No, you don't understand. We can't fight them. We have to run. Ethan met her panicked gaze. I don't run. The first blast hit. The entire ship shook violently, sparks flying from the control panels. Ethan gritted his teeth, gripping the controls as the horizon spun through space, dodging another energy beam. Syria pressed a hand to her head, eyes squeezed shut. No, 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 she whispered. Ethan stole a glance at her. She was shaking. And then something changed. Her skin flickered brighter. The air around her hummed. The ship's systems glitched for a moment, screens flashing wildly. And outside, the warship hesitated. Ethan's breath hitched. What the hell? Syria's golden eyes snapped open, but they were no longer gold. They were pure, blinding white. I won't go back. Her voice was different, layered, deeper, almost inhuman. The warship's transmission cut off instantly. Outside, the enemy vessel suddenly reeled back, its engines sputtering, lights flickering, as if something had overridden its systems. Ethan's eyes widened. Syria, what are you? She clenched her fists. The entire ship shook with an invisible force. The enemy warship started imploding. Ethan barely had time to react. Nova, get us the hell out of here. The Horizon's engines blasted to full power. Ethan hit the hyperdrive switch just as Syria's power surged again, and in a flash of white light, they were gone. The enemy warship, left in the darkness, collapsing from within. Inside the Horizon, silence filled the air. Ethan gasped for breath, his knuckles white around the controls. Slowly, he turned to Syria. She had collapsed against the seat, her skin dim, her chest rising and falling unevenly. She looked weaker than ever. Ethan's pulse was still racing. What had just happened? She had said she didn't know how to control her power. But now, she had just destroyed a warship with a single thought. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaling slowly. He was in way deeper than he had ever imagined. And for the first time, he wasn't sure if Syria was more dangerous to her enemies, or to him. The galactic chase. Ethan's hands were still gripping the ship's controls, knuckles white, heart pounding in his chest. His mind was racing. Syria had just wiped an entire warship out of existence. No weapons, no effort, just pure energy. And now she was lying on the co-pilot's seat, unconscious, her breathing shallow. What the hell was she? Nova's voice interrupted his thoughts. Captain, long-range scanners detect multiple incoming vessels. Estimated arrival in 3 minutes. Ethan's head snapped toward the screen. 3 ships. No 4. No 10. They were coming. His fingers flew over the controls, rerouting power to engines. They had to run. With a deep breath, he pushed the ship into hyperdrive. The stars stretched into long, brilliant lines as the horizon vanished into the depths of space. But Ethan knew the truth. They weren't safe. Not yet. Syria wakes. The hum of the ship's engines filled the cabin, a quiet rhythm of escape. Ethan stole a glance at Syria. She had barely moved. Her skin was flickering, glowing dimly like a dying star. For someone so powerful, she looked fragile. Then, a small sound, a sharp inhale. Syria's golden eyes snapped open, wild with confusion. She sat up too fast, gasping. Where are we? Ethan leaned against the console. Running. You blacked out after. He hesitated. You destroyed that warship. Syria flinched, shaking her head. I didn't mean to. Yeah, you keep saying that. She looked away, hugging her arms. Because it's true. Silence stretched between them. Ethan didn't press. Not yet. Then Nova's voice broke the quiet. Captain, I detect multiple warp signatures approaching. They are tracking us. Syria's eyes widened. They're still coming. Ethan cursed. Nova, how far to the next safe system? At current speed, 2 hours. They will reach us in 5 minutes. Syria's hands clenched into fists. Her breathing quickened. Ethan, listen to me. They don't stop. They'd never stop. Ethan didn't doubt her anymore. But he wasn't going to let them catch her. The chase begins. The ship lurched hard to the left as Ethan pulled into a sudden maneuver, dodging an incoming energy blast. The enemy ships had arrived. Ethan gritted his teeth. They were fast. Too fast. Nova, weapons online. Captain, our firepower is insufficient against. Just do it. The horizon's turrets blazed to life, firing bursts of plasma at their pursuers. The enemy ships dodged effortlessly. Syria clutched her head, her glow flickering. Ethan, we can't win this. Ethan barely dodged another blast. Yeah, I figured that out already. Then let me help. Ethan shot her a sharp look. You're barely conscious. You almost burned yourself out last time. Syria shook her head. If we don't stop them now, there will be more, and more, and more. She wasn't wrong. But he had no idea if she could even control her power. Syria closed her eyes, hands trembling. Just keep us steady. Outside, the enemy ships tightened their formation, preparing for the final strike. And then, Syria exhaled. A wave of energy exploded from her body. But this time, it didn't destroy. Instead, it bent the space around them. The stars outside warped, twisting unnaturally. The horizon blurred, then suddenly, it was gone. The rift. Ethan gasped. They were somewhere else. The ship floated in an eerie, silent void. The space outside was wrong. The stars were twisted into spirals. The color of the cosmos was an unnatural blue, shifting, pulsing. Syria slumped forward, shaking. Ethan caught her before she collapsed. What the hell did you do? Syria's breath was uneven. I shifted us, pulled us out of normal space. Ethan stared at the distorted universe outside. You just What? Created a wormhole, a rift. Syria nodded weakly. A temporary one. We're safe. For now. Ethan exhaled, still holding her up. Safe. For now. But he had a feeling that whatever was coming next would be worse than anything they had faced so far. The price of freedom. The ship drifted in the eerie void, surrounded by twisting stars and unnatural blue light. The horizon's engines hummed softly, but the sensors displayed nothing. No planets, no moons, no enemy ships, just emptiness. Ethan sat at the pilot's seat, gripping the controls as if they could ground him. His mind was still catching up with what had happened. One moment, they were being hunted. The next, Syria had bent space itself, pulling them into this place. But what the hell was this place? Behind him, Syria stirred. Ethan turned, watching as she weakly lifted herself off the co-pilot's seat. Her skin was dimmer, her glow flickering like a dying ember. Her golden eyes met his, exhausted but determined. It worked, she whispered. Ethan exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. Yeah, it worked. You saved us, for now. He gestured to the warped, blue-lit space outside. But where the hell are we? Syria's gaze drifted to the window, her expression distant. Between. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Between what? Between real space, a pocket between dimensions. Ethan let out a humorless laugh. Fantastic. So what? We're stuck in some kind of limbo. Syria shook her head. Not stuck. But we can't stay here long. The energy around us, it's unstable. She took a deep breath, wincing as if even speaking drained her. I need time to recover before I can pull us back. Ethan studied her. The glow beneath her skin, the way her energy pulsed. She wasn't just some runaway experiment. She was something else entirely. And yet she was still just a girl. A scared, exhausted girl who had spent her entire life running. Ethan sighed. Get some rest. I'll figure things out. But before Syria could respond, Nova's voice cut in. Captain, incoming anomaly detected. Ethan froze. Anomaly. Nova's scanners flickered. Unidentified structure approaching from all directions. What does that even mean? Ethan demanded. But then he saw it. Outside the ship, the blue-lit void shifted. The swirling stars twisted and pulled together, forming something massive. A structure. No, a city. It materialized from nowhere, unfolding like an impossible dream. Spires of black metal stretched in every direction, glowing veins of red energy pulsing along their edges. It was ancient, unnatural, and it was alive. Syria's breath hitched. No, this can't be real. Ethan turned to her, alarmed. What is it? Her hands trembled. The core. The name sent a chill down Ethan's spine. Syria's voice was barely a whisper. It's them, my creators. Captured. The ship jerked violently. Ethan slammed against the controls as the engine shut down instantly. The horizon was no longer moving under his control. Nova's systems flickered and died. Captain, we are being pulled in. Ethan cursed. He reached for manual override, but nothing responded. The ship was caught, ensnared by an invisible force. Outside, the city loomed closer, its dark towers reaching toward them like grasping fingers. Syria shook her head violently. Ethan, you have to fight it. Ethan gritted his teeth. I'm trying. But the ship was being dragged. The closer they got, the more Syria's body flickered. Her energy pulsed erratically. She clutched her chest, gasping. I can't stop it. Then, a voice. Not through the ship's comms. Not through Nova. But directly in their minds. Welcome home, Syria. Ethan's body went cold. Syria's eyes widened in horror. No. You have run for long enough. The voice continued, smooth and calculated. Return to the source. Fulfill your purpose. Syria clutched Ethan's arm. You have to fight it. Don't let them take me. Ethan's pulse thundered in his ears. Like hell I will. But before he could even move, everything went black. The labyrinth of the core. When Ethan woke, his head throbbed. The air was cold, sterile. He was lying on a metallic floor, the dim red glow of alien lights flickering above him. Panic shot through him. Syria. He pushed himself up, scanning the room. Syria was across from him, floating. Her body was suspended midair, encased in a web of glowing energy tendrils. Her face was twisted in pain, her breath shallow. And standing before her, a figure. It was tall, draped in flowing metallic robes, its face smooth and featureless, except for two glowing white eyes. It radiated authority, its presence suffocating. It spoke without a mouth. You should not have interfered, human. Ethan staggered to his feet. Let her go. The figure didn't move. She is not yours to protect. She was designed for a purpose that must be fulfilled. Ethan's fists clenched. What purpose? Syria struggled against the energy restraining her. Her glow flickered violently. The figure tilted its head. To bring balance. To cleanse. To destroy what must be destroyed. Ethan's stomach twisted. Syria was trembling, her breath shaky. I don't want this. The figure ignored her. You were made to be the ultimate weapon, a force beyond control. That is why we created you. That is why you must return. Ethan stepped forward. And if she refuses? The figure's glowing eyes locked onto him. Then she will die. Syria gasped, struggling harder against the restraints. No. Ethan's heart pounded. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about freedom. Syria had never been free. She had spent her life running, afraid of what she was, afraid of what they had turned her into. Ethan met her eyes, and in that moment he knew she wasn't going back. Not while he was still breathing. He turned back to the figure, his stance firm. You want her. His voice was ice. Then you're gonna have to kill me first. A moment of silence. Then the figure raised its hand. Energy crackled in the air. The battle for Syria's freedom had begun. The ultimate sacrifice. A deep hum filled the room as energy crackled between the glowing restraints that held Syria in midair. Her body flickered, her golden eyes wide with fear. Ethan stood between her and the faceless figure, his fists clenched, jaw tight. The figure raised a hand. You are insignificant, human, it said, its voice smooth, emotionless. You cannot stop what has already begun. Ethan smirked. Yeah, try me. Without warning, the figure flicked its wrist. A pulse of energy ripped through the air. Ethan barely had time to dodge before it slammed into the wall behind him, melting the metal on impact. They weren't playing around. He rolled, reaching for his blaster, only to realize it was gone, stripped from him while he was unconscious. Damn it. The figure stepped forward, its glowing white eyes locked onto Syria. She groaned in pain, struggling harder against her restraints. I won't go back, she growled through gritted teeth. The figure ignored her. You are unstable. If you do not return, the energy within you will consume you. Ethan's stomach twisted. He looked at Syria. Her glow was erratic, flickering uncontrollably. Was that true? Was she really dying? Syria's eyes met his. He's lying, she gasped. They don't care if I die. They just don't want me free. Ethan believed her, which meant they had one option. Fight. Breaking the chains. Ethan moved fast. If he didn't have a weapon, he'd make do. He grabbed a loose piece of metal from the floor and lunged. The figure barely reacted. With a flick of its hand, Ethan was thrown back, skidding across the cold metal. Syria gasped. No, stop. The figure turned to her. You will obey. It reached out, and Syria screamed. Her body convulsed as the restraints tightened, crackling with raw energy. Ethan gritted his teeth, forcing himself up. "Hey, you want power? Try this." Before the figure could react, he grabbed a loose wire from the broken wall and jammed it into the nearest power conduit. The room exploded in sparks. The energy that held Syria flickered, just for a second. But that second was all she needed. A wave of power erupted from her body, shattering the restraints. The figure staggered back. Syria dropped to the ground, panting, her skin glowing brighter than ever. And she was furious. "You think you own me?" she growled, stepping forward. "You think you can keep me in chains?" The figure lifted its hand, ready to attack. But Syria raised hers first. A pulse of energy ripped through the room. The faceless figure was sent flying, slamming into the far wall with a sickening crunch. Its glowing eyes flickered, then dimmed. It was gone. Syria gasped, staggering. Ethan caught her before she collapsed. "Easy," he muttered. Syria's body was burning up, her energy unstable. She shook her head. "We have to go. Now." Ethan wasn't about to argue. Escape through fire. Alarms blared as they sprinted through the halls of the Corps' fortress. The walls pulsed with red warning lights, the metal beneath their feet shaking. They weren't going to let her leave. Syria winced, clutching her chest. Her glow was too strong, flickering wildly. She was losing control. Ethan grabbed her wrist. "Stay with me, kid." Syria forced herself forward. Hangars ahead. But before they could reach it, the corridor sealed shut. Ethan cursed. "Nova, tell me you can override this." Silence. Then Nova's voice, weaker than usual. "Captain. System compromised. Interference detected." Syria let out a choked breath. "They're trying to trap us here." Ethan clenched his jaw. "Not happening." He turned to Syria. "Can you blast it open?" She hesitated. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Stand back." Ethan barely had time to move before Syria thrust her hands forward. A surge of energy tore through the metal door, melting it into molten slag. They didn't stop running. The final choice. The hangar was massive. Ships of every kind lined the walls. But there, in the center, the horizon. Ethan almost laughed. "I knew they'd keep her intact." The problem. The enemy ships were already powering up. Syria stumbled, her glow too bright, too unstable. Ethan caught her. "Syria, talk to me. Are you okay?" Her eyes flickered. "I don't think I can make it." Ethan's stomach dropped. "What are you saying?" Syria's body was breaking apart. "I'm too unstable. If I leave this place like this, I'll burn everything around me." Ethan felt like he had been punched. "No, there's another way." Syria smiled weakly. "There isn't." The ground trembled beneath them. The Corps' defenses were closing in. Syria took Ethan's hands in hers. "I can end this. I can wipe them out. I just have to. Let go." Ethan's breath hitched. "You'll die." Syria's golden eyes met his. "I was never meant to live, Ethan. I was meant to destroy. But now, I get to choose who I destroy." Ethan shook his head. "There has to be another way." She squeezed his hands. "Thank you for showing me what freedom feels like." Then she stepped back and let go. A burst of white light erupted from her body, filling the entire hangar, swallowing the core, the ships, the guards, everything. Ethan barely made it onto the horizon before the wave of energy consumed the fortress. As he hit the controls, he saw her, just for a moment, standing in the center of the destruction, smiling. Then the light took her, and she was gone. A new beginning. The horizon lurched forward, thrusters at maximum, as the explosion swallowed the Corps' fortress behind them. Ethan's hands gripped the controls, his jaw clenched as he watched the impossible unfold. A blinding white light erupted outward, consuming the entire structure, burning through metal, warships, and corridors as if they had never existed. And in the center of it all, Syria. Her body shimmered, no longer just glowing but radiating pure energy, pulsing with uncontainable power. She wasn't fighting it anymore. She had become it. Ethan's heart pounded as he saw her standing in the wreckage, her golden eyes meeting his one last time. Then, in a final, silent explosion of light, she was gone. The fortress was erased, the core's warships obliterated. The creatures that had hunted her vanished into nothingness. And then, silence. The horizon shot through the debris field, escaping into the cold void of space. Behind them, there was nothing left. Only the emptiness where Syria had once been. The weight of loss. Ethan sat in the pilot's chair, his fingers motionless on the controls. His breaths were slow, heavy. The hum of the ship felt deafening in the absolute quiet. She was gone, after everything they had been through. Running, fighting, escaping. It ended like this. His gut twisted. He had promised her there was another way, that they would find one. But in the end, she had chosen to save him, to save everything. And now she was just gone. Nova's voice was softer than usual. "Captain, we are alone." Ethan exhaled slowly, rubbing a hand over his face. Alone. He didn't like the sound of that. A faint pulse. Days passed. Ethan barely spoke. He barely slept. He kept the ship moving, though he didn't know where he was going. He tried to tell himself he had done the right thing, that Syria had made her own choice, that she had finally been free in the end. But the truth was, he missed her. He missed her sarcastic little comments, her stubbornness, the way she had stared at the stars like they held all the answers. The ship felt too quiet without her. Until beep. A soft alert pulsed through the cockpit. Ethan frowned, glancing at the console. Nova. "Captain, I am detecting an energy signature." Ethan's pulse jumped. No way. His fingers flew over the controls, scanning the anomaly. It was faint, almost non-existent, a small flickering pulse. But it was there. And he recognized it. Syria. His breath caught in his throat. "Nova, pinpoint that signal." The AI complied, the ship's scanners zooming in on the faint energy signature. It was weak, barely holding together. But it was her. She wasn't gone. Not completely. Ethan's hands tightened around the controls, and for the first time in days, his lips curled into a smirk. "Hang on, kid. I'm coming." Rebirth. The horizon soared through space, following the trace energy signature through the wreckage of what had once been the core's fortress. Ethan's heart pounded. He knew it was impossible. He had seen her burn away, seen her erase herself from existence. And yet, as he navigated through the silent remains of the battlefield, he saw it, a small, flickering mass of light. It wasn't Syria, not yet. But it was something. A piece of her, a fragment of her energy, fighting to hold itself together. Ethan didn't hesitate. He adjusted the ship's trajectory, moving closer. The flickering light reacted. It pulsed. It reached toward him. And as Ethan stretched his hand toward the console, toward her, the light surged. A wave of warmth washed over the ship, sending sparks through the control panels. Nova's voice crackled. "Warning, unidentified energy surge detected." The light expanded, growing, taking shape. Ethan's breath hitched. He could see her. She wasn't solid. Not yet. But her form, her presence. It was Syria. A voice, soft, distant, familiar, whispered in the cabin. Ethan. His heart nearly stopped. He swallowed hard, his voice quieter than it had ever been. "Yeah, kid. I'm here." The light flickered again, stronger this time. More stable. Syria wasn't dead. She was changing. Becoming something new. And Ethan would be there. No matter what came next. A new beginning. As the horizon drifted through space, a small, steady glow illuminated the cockpit. It wasn't the cold, sterile light of the ship. It was warm. It was alive. Syria's journey wasn't over. Neither was Ethan's. And whatever came next, they would face it together.